So don't you forget it. That's right. Politics.
All right, back. Welcome to the Young Turks. We got a wild and woolly show for you today. You know what? I feel good today for a couple of reasons. Number one, we have victories. We have victories that I'd like to report to you. And then number two, I feel like today's one of those days that, hey, you know what? It turns out we do a real service in this show. That if you actually watch this show or listen to this show on a regular basis, you're going to know what's happening in politics. And in fact, you can even tell what's going to happen before it happens. Well, that's a pretty damn good show, don't it? Okay, I'm going to explain why that's the case in a little bit. Okay, first, before I tell you anything else, I'm driving into the studio. I see a guy with a bumper sticker that says University of Alabama. And I thought, Alabama. Bradley Byrne. Goddamn liberal. I thought about that Peterson guy or whatever his name was with the rifle. We're Republicans. We shoot people. All right, look, it's Alabama. I feel bad. You know I love you. Oh, by the way, somebody had an awesome theory. I applied for a job when I was a conservative talk show host in Huntsville, Alabama, and I didn't get the job. And so somebody's theory online, I read it somewhere, said I'm actually bitter at Alabama because of that. And then I'm striking back at Alabama. What? Go. I love people, man. It's all about, as JR always says, it's all about projection. Like that guy would hold a grudge that long, right? But I shouldn't have gotten that job. It turns out they were right. I wasn't a real conservative. And who wants to live in Huntsville, Alabama? See, there goes that bitterness again. All right, Alabama, much love. I know you're not all Republicans that believe that Bradley Byrne's a goddamn liberal for believing in evolution. All right, so now let's get started. Come on, big day. First of all, of course, elections last night, huge results. Let me give you the most important one first. Chris Dudley has won. Yeah, the former center for the Portland Trail Blazers, among others. The most overrated player in NBA history. Now promises to be a fairly overrated politician. He won the nomination for governor in the Republican primaries. And he'll be going up against popular former governor Ted Kulongoski, who also won in Oregon. So my guess is that Chris Dudley will just clog up the paint as usual and then move on along. Okay, God, that guy got paid so much money for so little work. I mean, is it surprising that he wound up becoming a Republican? He was already the Goldman Sachs of the NBA when he was getting paid all that money for doing so little. All right, so it'll be interesting to see how Chris Dudley does in the general election now that he's won the Republican primary. It turns out he lives in a rich neighborhood in Portland. I didn't see that coming. Okay, well, of course he's going to. Don't get me wrong. What do I need him to live in the, in a bad part of town? He's got millions upon millions. Yes.
This is the same guy. He also played for the Knicks. Am I right?
I think he played for nearly every basketball team in the country. They were like, hey, you know what? Oh, I got a great idea. Why don't we get a tall guy? Well, we can't afford anybody who's good. How about we get Chris Dudley and way overpay him? That was like the genius idea every GM had at the same time.
He had a really good agent, but the most thing I remember Chris Dudley for was getting dunked on by Shaq when Shaq was with the Lakers. And he kind of straddled him a little bit and shoved him, and he threw the ball back at him because he was very upset about it.
Oh, we got it? Let me check this thing out. No?
Oh, it happened. Shaq threw down on him, and it was one of the most devastating things that could ever happen to a guy. You don't want another man to do this to you. It was sooner or later we'll get it out.
No. Let me explain something. Okay, if I was Chris Dudley, I'd take that kind of devastation all day long. I mean, that fool was getting paid how many, like $10-12 million a year to get dunked on. Okay, I mean, another way of looking at it, he's one of the biggest geniuses in America. Okay. I mean, there's a lot of other people who are 7 feet tall. They just can't figure out that, hey, you know what? I can go to the NBA and just stand in the middle of the paint. Okay? He had no talent whatsoever. All right. And I'm not saying that because I'm biased because he's a Republican. Bless his heart. Good luck to you in Oregon. Okay. You want to give it one more shot real quick? No, we don't have it. All right. We'll save it for later. All right. Look, let's get to the real results. So last night we had the primaries throughout the country in Kentucky, Pennsylvania, and Arkansas, okay? And who won? Well, I'll tell you who won. Progressives. Went 4 for 4, arguably 5 for 5. Now, that's not what you're reading in the papers today, right? Oh, my God, established Democrats lose. People backed by Obama lose. So let me explain. Why did progressives win? First of all, Pennsylvania's biggest race is Arlen Specter versus Joe Sestak. Arlen Specter was a Republican for decades, was a Democrat for a couple of seconds, right? Was Sestak more progressive than Arlen Specter? Absolutely. No one disputes that. And Sestak won. So the more progressive candidate won in the most important election. That's 1-0 in favor of the progressives. Then when you go to John Murtha's old seat, well, then you had the Democrat, Mark Kritz, running against Tim Burns, the Republican. And guess who won? And that was a district that John McCain won over Barack Obama. And that's where the Republicans are like, oh, yeah, we got this one locked down. Democrats are going down. We're going to recapture the House and everything. Oopsie doopsie, Mark Kritz won. Democrat won. Okay, now Mark Kritz is not your top-of-the-line progressive. Okay, don't get me wrong. But, hey, he's a hell of a lot more progressive than the Republican. So that we're 2 for 2 there, right? Then you go over to Arkansas. Blanche Lincoln, established, conservative, Democrat, corporatist, as bad as it gets as far as the Democrats go, versus a real progressive, Bill Halter. You know what? They go to a runoff, okay? Blanche Lincoln was supposed to win easily. No. Instead, 3 weeks later, we're going to have another election where those two face off. That's definitely a win for the progressives. That's 3 for 3. Now you go to Kentucky. Rand Paul versus Trey Grayson. Trey Grayson is the guy picked by Mitch McConnell himself. A Republican stalwart will vote the party line. Rand Paul, look, a little cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. Wants to get rid of the Department of Education, Americans with Disabilities Act, and the IRS. So you might say, well, and teabaggers love Rand Paul. Right? I'm sorry, the Tea Party folks love Rand Paul, right? So why is that a progressive victory? Well, first of all, it's a Republican primary, so progressives don't win anyway. But if you're going to say which one would progressives have preferred, definitely Rand Paul. Because as Rand Paul might be crazy on some of the other issues, but he's for auditing the Fed. That's progressives absolutely agree. He's against the surge in Afghanistan. Progressives absolutely agree. And he's very skeptical about the Patriot Act. Progressives agree. Him versus a guy who would have voted for corporate interest every single time, handpicked by Mitch McConnell? Oh, hell no, I'll go with Rand Paul every time. So we're 4 for 4. And why are we possibly 5 for 5? Because in the Blanche Lincoln-Bill Halter race, if Bill Halter had just won the progressive candidate, that actually might have been worse. Why? Because now that you have a runoff, that extends it for another 3 weeks. Blanche Lincoln was playing cutesy games in the Senate. Oh, you know what? I got a real progressive amendment on derivatives. And she does. It's the first truly progressive thing she's ever done. Why? Because she got a primary opponent who was more progressive than her. And she was going to throw that amendment under the bus the minute the primary was over. I have a story later in the program that's going to show you exactly that was the plan, right? But now, all of a sudden, the primary isn't over. She's got to run for another 3 weeks. And she has to keep that progressive amendment that might actually wind up helping the country tremendously. 5 for 5. Progressives win in every race. Okay, now, look, do I think that this was I don't want anybody to get me wrong. Was this a message from America saying, we love progressivism, and that's the only reason why we voted the way we did in all these races? No. Come on, don't get carried away. As it is, we wind up with, I think, good to great victories, right? But the real message, of course, that American people are sending is, screw the establishment. Okay, if Mitch McConnell picks someone, I got no interest. If Obama picks someone, I got no interest. Because Obama was on the side of Specter, and he was on the side of Blanche Lincoln, the corporatist establishment Democrats who he wanted to protect. Sad day for you, Obama. It didn't work out that way. Here's what the American people did instead. They threw the bums out. They say, oh, you're going to keep making those deals, think we're stupid. Well, here's who's stupid, you. Because you just lost your seat. Move along, son. Okay, that's what happened to Specter, and that's what's going to happen to Lincoln in the runoff. So it's an anti-establishment vote, and I love that vote. And look, I love that vote if it comes from the left, but also if it comes from the right. So I was just as encouraged by Kentucky, even though I don't agree with Rand Paul on 60% of the issues. I think he's crazy on 60% of the issues. I still love that vote because it's the voters saying, I've had enough of the establishment. I know what they're going to do. They're going to go for the lobbyist money. And at least Rand Paul is going to be a conservative/libertarian that's actually going to represent my principles. Hey, there's no problem with that, man. That's what we want America to get back to. So last night's results were as good as you could have possibly hoped for. Win, win, win for everybody except the establishment. I love that. Now there are articles about, oh, is Obama's backing not really that important, la la la. See, I'm telling you, man, they don't get it. They don't get it. They still think it's the old world where people look up and go, okay, what does the magic television box tell me to do? And what do the people in power tell me to do? Oh, the president says he's endorsed that person. Well, then I will vote for that person. Oh, he's an incumbent and famous, so I will vote for that person. No, the new paradigm is, if that's what the establishments tell me, I'm going to go the opposite way. Oh, Obama, I'm going to listen to Obama. Who's going to listen to Obama? And the establishment, the old media can't get it through their heads. And what I'm referring to is an Associated Press article where they're like, again, they don't think about power is actually shifting to the people, information is getting to people in a correct way. No, they view it in the old prism of, well, is it pro-Obama or anti-Obama? Well, okay, well then it's anti-Obama, I guess. So Obama has no power, so that means the Democrats are in a lot of trouble. Oh, come on, man. Come on, think a little bit. Think a little bit. Look at the results. You're driving me crazy. Okay? But you know what? Who cares? Let him go in that rudderless ship thinking, oh, everything's going to be all right. It's going to be just like before. And then they'll run into that goddamn iceberg and go, oh my God, what happened? Everybody overboard. Good, yeah. Then maybe you'll learn your lesson. All right. Now, I mentioned Rand Paul as being a little radical. What am I going to do with Rand Paul? So I'm glad he won. Excellent, because it's anti-establishment vote. He's with progressives on a lot of important issues, auditing the Fed, against the wars, etc. But he has his kooky side, right? So one of the things that he apparently believes in is getting rid of the Americans with Disabilities Act. Come on. You see? All right, look. Let's watch a videotape of him talking about this, and then I'll come and explain, if I have to, how absurd that is. Let's watch.
Can I ask you a question? Sure. Do you support the Americans with Disabilities Act, or do you think that's the federal government getting too involved?
You know, I think a lot of things on employment should be done locally, people figuring out what's right or wrong locally. Some of the things, for example, I think we can come up with common sense solutions. Like, for example, if you have a 3-story building and you have someone who applies for a job, you might get them a job on the first floor if they're in a wheelchair, as opposed to making the person in the business with an elevator, you know what I mean? So things like that I don't think are fair to the business owner. I think we should try to accommodate people out of
But you would have voted against that.
Well, I've never looked at the whole thing to see, but I think that I don't like the idea of telling a business owner that they have to put an elevator in versus that you just not make an accommodation by giving them the first floor.
Do you think Americans, based on the Second Amendment, do you think they have a constitutional right to violently overthrow the government if they feel
We're going to stop recording on this public place, sir. This is a public place.
All right, that was a lot of fun at the end. You see what happened? Okay, the guy asked him, hey, do you think Americans, based on the Second Amendment, do you think they have a constitutional right to violently overthrow the government? And then the staffer for Rand Paul thought, oh, this put him in trouble. Like, oh, that's it, end of recording. No. Because this guy keeps answering things honestly. If he answers that one honestly, we're going to get in a lot of trouble here. Okay, so no, end of this. Okay, I'm going to be the cop that stops it. So now let's get to the one he did answer, the Americans with Disabilities Act. See, this is the problem with libertarian philosophy. He says, well, let the businesses sort it out. Look, if they hire a guy who's got a disability, all right, common sense will tell you don't put him on the 3rd floor, put him on the 1st floor. Look, common sense ain't going to cut it. I mean, how many times have we gone through this? You're going to let the businesses voluntarily decide to be good guys? You think they're going to build a ramp that costs them a lot of money in case of people with disabilities apply? No. They're going to say, hey, listen, good luck with those stairs. If you can't make it up, I don't give a damn. See, part of the job of the government is to protect the weak, okay? And to protect all of us, right? And to give us a level playing field. So, I mean, under the libertarian philosophy, well, if you got a disability, well, that's a sad day for you. The free market will work itself out with you sitting on your home couch and the other people getting the jobs. So now maybe you agree with that. Okay, I don't. But if you do, I guess Rand Paul's your guy. I think that's way, way too harsh. And here's what I know for a fact. The businesses are not voluntarily going to do the right thing. They never have, they never will. It's not that they're bad guys, it's just that's not their motive. Their motive is the profit motive, okay? All right, now, on to other kooky ideas that Rand Paul has. He wants to get rid of the Department of Education. Hey, you know what? Good luck with that. Have at it, Hoss. Look, here's the thing. At least that's not driven by some lobbyist interest or corporate interest. You want to put that up for a vote? I think you're going to get your ass handed to you on a platter. But go for it. There ain't nothing wrong with that. That's an honest debate in the country. You say you're against education. I say I'm for education. I'm being a little unfair there. A little unfair. He's against the Department of Education, which is different. But I think he's going to lose that vote. But no harm in trying. Okay. Now the real problem is his other idea, abolishing the IRS. You know, conservatives pretend that they're for balanced budgets, etc., and they care deeply about that and the deficit. So they imagine what the deficit is going to look like if you abolish the IRS. Yeah, let's not collect income tax. Let's see how that one turns out, okay? So then, oh, what sick that I didn't see that coming. Oh my God, Jesus, Lord mercy, look at that deficit. Now, I know they're going to say, hey, no, it doesn't mean we're not collecting taxes. We're just not collecting income tax. First of all, you're never going to be able to collect enough tax if you don't have the income tax. And it's going to be a disastrous experiment if you try. Doesn't matter, it's never going to pass. But I'm telling you, if you want to have an argument on ideology. Number two, the real problem with that idea is, look, if you do taxes based on sales tax or consumption tax, flat tax, these are the kind of things that conservatives and libertarians push for. You know what that shifts the tax burden onto? Poor, but mainly middle class. So let's take a consumption tax as an example, right? The rich only spend a small percentage of their money. So, I mean, forget Bill Gates, even people much less wealthy than him, they spend, what, 1 to 2% of their money? So they're going to get taxed on 1 to 2% of their money. Whereas if you're a regular average American family, you spend a great percentage of your income on expenses, on food, your housing, et cetera, et cetera. So you're going to get taxed on 60, 70, 80, 90% of your income. So the great idea, populist idea that the right wing has is, let's greatly increase the burden of taxes on the middle class and cut the taxes for the rich tremendously. Wow, that's an idea I've got no interest in. It is not just, it doesn't make any sense, and it will just pulverize the country. But luckily, it doesn't have any chance of passing. So you know what? Rand Paul wins. The things that he agrees with us on have a chance of passing. I'll take it. The things he doesn't agree with us on, he's cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. He ain't ever going to win those anyway. So much rather have him than an establishment Republican who's only going to vote based on how corporate America tells him to vote. That's the bottom line. All right, we'll be right back. Young Turks. Back on the Young Turks. All right, now in the beginning of the show, I promised you that we would do a story that explains why it's helpful to watch this show and how it could help you to understand politics a little bit better, right? Well, we have the perfect example of that here, and that's why I brought it. On derivatives reform, we had Blanche Lincoln's amendment, which was going to be pretty strong, and it says, hey, you know what? You can't do derivatives trading with taxpayer-backed funds. So you're putting money into a bank, and that's backed by the American taxpayers through FDIC, et cetera. Can't use that money to make these derivatives trades, which are much riskier. Makes a lot of sense. And it looked like that was going to be in the final version of the bill because on Tuesday night at midnight, you couldn't add any more amendments to the bill. And right now, there was no amendments that had a realistic chance of winning that were going to knock down Blanche Lincoln's amendment. Looks pretty good, right? Until 11:57 p.m. 3 minutes before the deadline, Chris Dodd, who is in charge of this reform project, had handed in a 5-page amendment with a handwritten signature on there that said, oh, by the way, we were kidding. No, there won't be any regulation of derivatives. We will postpone it for 2 years. And then I love this, but first of all, if you postpone it for 2 years, by that time the economy is going to crash anyway, right? But put that aside. Here's my favorite part. And at the end of 2 years, a council of regulators will decide if we're going to implement it or maybe not at all. And who's the head of those regulators? Tim Geithner. That's a good one. That's a good one. Other guys on the list are Ben Bernanke, In case you don't know, Geithner and Bernanke hate this rule. They lobbied against this rule. They tried to get it killed. The Obama administration, led by Geithner on this issue, tried to make sure it doesn't get included in the bill. Geithner, gee, I wonder which way he's going to go on that. Of course he's going to say at the end of his 2-year study, as that amendment says, it turns out it's not good for the economy or we're going to kill it. So in essence, this absolutely positively kills this Blanche-Lincoln amendment if it passes. Now, it's just submitted for proposal, right? But if that weren't bad enough, at 11:59 p.m., Dodd puts in another amendment 1 minute before the deadline saying, oh, by the way, that Dorgan amendment that says that you can't do naked credit default swaps, which is just total side bets. You don't have any underlying assets. You're just betting on somebody else's assets, okay? It's the best amendment there is out there. Dodd's like, yeah, that one we're also going to study for 2 years, and that one Tim Geithner and Bernanke, et cetera, are also going to decide. They're well on the record as saying they hate that amendment, and they don't want it to pass under any circumstances. So they're both possibly killed by adding these amendments. Now, why does that show I was right, and that you might actually learn something from watching this show? Number one, I told you, they're not going to do these reforms. They're going to do reforms that, as the Washington Post article explains, that both sides, leadership on both sides, can agree to, right? The Republicans are never going to agree to real reform, and neither are the Democratic leadership, who are totally bought by the banks. They're not going to do the reform. Here, let me give you a sense of it. You know how much money the top 5 banks made from these swaps trades that would be controlled by the Blanche-Lincoln Amendment, et cetera? They made $28 billion last year. You think they're going to give up $28 billion? You think in this system that the people will get to overrule them, even though we're in a democracy? Then you're hopelessly naive. No, we're going to lose on that count. That's what I told you. And people call me pessimistic. No. I'm long-term optimistic. I really am. I'm an optimistic guy by nature. In the end, I think we're going to get them, okay? But in the short term, I have to be realistic with you. They're not going to pass. They're going to find every trick they can. But point number 2 is maybe even more important, because we dive into the issues and tell you why they do what they do. So why were they put in with 3 minutes left to the deadline? Why were these amendments put in? Because the game was, hey, Blanche Lincoln, who's been in the pocket of the banks this whole time, conservative Democrat from Arkansas, she'll get to say that she's doing the toughest amendment, the most progressive amendment, because she's got a progressive candidate running against her in the primary. And then after the primary is over, which was last night, then Chris Dodd goes, oh, yeah, did we mean that? No. Oh, we meant this. And then Blanche Lincoln will turn around and go, oh, I can't believe he did that. That is such a gosh darn shame. All right, what can I do? I guess I lost. And then the banks get their way, the establishment guys get reelected, and everybody's happy, except for the American taxpayer, right? Now, here comes, I read that in the morning, first thing I thought. Then later in the day, something changed, proving me even more right. You know what happened? Dodd withdrew that particular amendment. Why did he withdraw it? Just like I told you yesterday on the show. It's because Blanche Lincoln has to extend her primary by 3 weeks. See, I said that would be a huge win for us. I'm happier that her primary got extended than if Bill Holter won outright. Because if he had won outright, or if he had lost outright, Blanche Lincoln would go, oh, Chris Dodd twisted my arm. Oh, what could I do with that last second amendment? Okay, banks win. As it is, she's got to still fight because she still has a primary and an election in 3 weeks. So Dodd today comes out and says, yeah, I thought about that, and it's probably not a good idea. I'm withdrawing it. Now, you might be thinking right now, if you're following closely, hey, wait a minute, though, but that's a good thing. So they can't put in any more amendments, and we just killed the one that might kill the Blanche Lincoln amendment, so we're going to get the result we want, right? Wrong again, Bob. What Chris Dodd gets to do, because he's the head of that committee, is at any point put in a quote-unquote manager's amendment. So if Blanche Lincoln wins in 3 weeks, here, I'll lay it out as a marker for you guys. You see if I'm right or wrong, okay? If she wins in 3 weeks, or if she loses, because either way, they get to move on. Right before they take a vote on this, oh, look at that. Chris Dodd's going to be like, yeah, 3 minutes left. Manager's amendment. Yeah, go ahead. No, that doesn't apply. Get out of here. Okay, now look, timing's on our side, though. That's the one advantage we have, because they might vote on all this before 3 weeks is up. And if that's the case, then I don't know how they're going to finagle it, right? My guess is here comes the delays. They're going to have to delay for 3 weeks until Lincoln's primary is over, okay? Because they're not going to pass this. I wish to God they would, but they're not going to. Because look, all of these amendments, if you actually tell the banks, hey, you know what, you can't do this kind of trading anymore, they're going to lose a tremendous amount of money. And the other thing we're going to find out is that they don't actually have the capital to back up these bets. That's pulling out a very important card from the house of cards that they've built. And the banks aren't going to let you pull that card, because then the system caves in on itself. Now, it's going to cave in on itself no matter what. We're just delaying the inevitable as they take home more and more bonuses. But Geithner knows that. Bernanke knows that. They're not going to allow it. No way. So if I'm wrong, I'll be the first to admit it, and I will celebrate tremendously. But right now, it looks like it's the same old tricks to get the same guys reelected so they can give the same favors to the same banks. And, of course, the people who get screwed are also the same, the American taxpayers. All right, now, that's point number one on what's happening on the bills, okay? Now, here's point number two. There is one good amendment that might actually pass, and it's called the Volcker Rule. And it's what the president has come out, said very strongly that it's got to be in the bill, okay? And the Volcker Rule is, hey, you know what? You can do trading for your clients. You can do derivatives for your clients. You can do swaps. You can do all that, which I don't agree with, okay? But that's what the Volcker Rule says. But you cannot do that at the same bank that you're doing proprietary trading, meaning trading for yourself, right? Because then you're going to have a conflict of interest with the money you're using to make your own bets and the money you use to make your clients' bets. Okay. Now, I think that's the weakest of the proposals on derivatives reform, et cetera, right? But it's not bad. It's not bad. It's a step in the right direction, right? Now, what have the Republicans done? Of course, they've gone to block it, and they're going to filibuster it, and they've made their stand. They're very clear. No. We are on the side of the banks, and we will protect their proprietary trading no matter what the conflict of interest is and no matter how much risk that puts you in. So Simon Johnson wrote a great article today on Huffington Post and Baseline Scenario saying, all right, now batter up. President Obama, what are you going to do? Now, look, this is one of those important pathways, a fork in the road. Now, we've told you about a couple of forks in the road before, right? I thought the public option was one. That was going to tell us if the president was going to try to get a little bit of tweaking of the change of the system, or if he was serious and he was going to try for real change and really fight corporate interests. And it turns out, no. He's going to go for a little bit of change and not fight corporate interests. So that one did not go well. The second fork in the road that I talked about was actually very recently on the FCC ruling. Will they fight for net neutrality, or will they quietly let it go? Okay. Now, that one Obama passed, it appears in flying colors. He did fight for net neutrality. Now, that one was so important because that goes to his intentions. Because if he didn't fight for net neutrality, that means his intentions aren't even good. Because that is so brazen, such a violation of his promises, and so in favor of corporate interests to the point where we couldn't possibly get our thoughts and viewpoints out, no matter where they might be on the ideological spectrum, that you would think, no, the guy has bad intentions. But he passed that. So he's got the right intentions. He's just going for a little bit of change. Now, what does the Volcker Rule tell you? It tells you about results. Okay, is he going to actually fight for this and get some result? A result that I think is far too weak, but hey, it's going in the right way. Or if he's not going to fight for it, he's not going to get it. And if you don't even have the Volcker Rule, then the economic collapse is, then I'm going to start telling you about how to react, because then it's inevitable. Then you got to talk about getting into hard assets, whether that's real estate, gold, etc. I'm not playing with you, okay? The Volcker Rule is the bare minimum. Now, if the president, so that's why we're at this fork in the road. If the president decides, I'm not going to fight for the Volcker Rule, even though he said before, oh, the Volcker Rule, I got to have it, oh, it's so important, etc. If he just lets the Republicans filibuster and kill it and go, oh, golly gee willikers, what could I do? Well, then you have the answer as to the results that Obama's going to get over the next, remaining 3 years of his term, which I predict, unfortunately, will be disastrous economic results in the long run. In the short run, the stimulus bill can work and you can add more jobs month to month, etc. But then the whole infrastructure is going to collapse. So that's exciting. We're going to find out. And I don't know the answer to this one. And I told you on all the other ones, I didn't know which way he was going to go until he made it clear, right? So we'll see. President Obama, the ball's in your court. If he doesn't come out fighting for the Volcker Rule and they let it die, then we picked the wrong guy because he's not going to get the job done. So big stand coming up. Let's see what happens. All right, by the way, on the proprietary trading, to give you a sense of exactly what I'm talking about here in terms of these guys are, I mean, I love every time I repeat the most obvious thing in the world, that the bankers don't have our best interest in mind. Goldman Sachs, report out today, economic report out, saying, golly gee willikers, I don't know how this wound up happening, but it turns out the advice they gave for their clients that does not involve their own money, they take money no matter if their clients win or lose. Well, that advice was wrong 7 out of 9 times. So their investors lost a tremendous amount of money. But on proprietary trading, the trading they made with their own money, they were completely right. Every single day of the last quarter, they made a profit. So, well, it turns out we lost your money. But a funny thing happened on the way to the forum. We made all the money. We made the money off your commissions, and we made the money off of our bets. Wow, it's just probably a wild coincidence. Totally wild coincidence. But don't worry about splitting proprietary trading up from your money or anything like that. Don't worry about the Volcker Rule. Don't worry about regulating derivatives. We got it. I mean, you got to be a real sucker to put your money in Goldman Sachs. And unfortunately, we were all forced in that position because taxpayer money went into Goldman Sachs. Okay, don't get me wrong, man. I'm coming for them. Don't get pessimistic on me, okay? And when we're in Washington, not quite ready to reveal it yet, but I can tell you the outlines of it. June 7th to June 9th, I'm in Washington, D.C. One of those days, we're going to go to the Treasury Department, and we're going to say, listen, Goldman Sachs took $13 billion of our money. You know what we'd like? We'd like it back. Okay? We're going to come for these guys because they just flat out took our money like they're taking everybody's money. And by the way, they keep telling you the Democrats in charge, like Geithner, will tell you, oh, no, there's nothing we can do. You know what Germany did overnight? They banned naked short selling, which means naked means bet. Whenever you hear naked in financial transactions, that means it's just a bet, okay? So they banned it. Oh, the markets are in a panic, blah, blah, blah. You know what? They'd be all right. Okay, the world didn't collapse. It's fine. Okay, the issue is a lot more complicated than that, but it just shows you in a simplistic way of putting it, of course it can be done. Geithner and Bernanke are full of crap when they tell you, oh, no, don't do that. That'll hurt our banker friends. You know, they call me partisan sometimes. They say like, oh, yeah, I just support Democrats. Have I supported a Democrat today? I mean, yeah, I guess in the beginning I was excited some progressives won, although they beat Democrats, right? Democrats, like they're my uncle or something. Couldn't give a rat's ass. Okay. Now, here's a funny one. Anytime you go against Democrats, the Republicans come around and tell you, oh, no, trust me, I'm much worse. We have a perfect example of that. So Democrats passed the House bill that would have increased funding for scientific research and math and science education, okay? Now, look, that's science and math. Republicans hate that. They're like, yeah, you're going to do scientific research? Goddamn liberals doing science and math? Education, can't have that, right? So what did they do? They were very clever. A guy named Representative Ralph Hall, Republican of Texas, did what they call motion to recommit. And he injected an extra part into the bill so that the Democrats, if they wanted to vote for extra science and math education, would have to also vote for porn. So here's how he phrased it. It would bar the federal government from paying the salaries of employees who've been disciplined for viewing pornography at work. So if you're going to vote for the science and math education, you're also going to vote to say, no, federal employees can watch porn and they don't have to get punished for it. Now, politically, you can't do that, right? So then the Democrats switch their votes and go, oh, damn it, and the bill gets killed. Now, it could come back up later, right? But this is what the Republicans do. I mean, you think they're honest brokers? We reach out to them to see if there could be bipartisan compromise? No, and you think that they have your best interests in mind. No. If they lose on the science and math education, you think they're just going to say, all right, well, look, we had a debate and American people voted for the Democrats, and so they won on that issue. No, they go to dirty tricks right away. Oh, yeah, Democrats are for porn. Look, this is how Washington gets nothing done. It's because of absurd Republican obstructionists like this who gum up everything with nonsense political tricks. And again, I say it all the time, if you're a Republican or a conservative, why are you in favor of this? I mean, do you think this is cute? Show me Ralph Hall again. You think this guy's cute? Does he look cute to you? So, yeah, I'll put porn and everything, and the Democrats will have to vote against it, and then we'll get nothing done. Yay, Washington. This is exactly what's wrong with Washington. Get your mind off of porn, Hall, and vote on science and math, you clown. I mean, come on, man. If you're a Republican, how are you not embarrassed these days? I mean, really? Like your big thing is, oh, we're obstructionists and we hate science and math. Good luck with that approach. See how that works out for you. All right, final big news for you guys for today. Well, at least for now. Campbell Brown stepping down from CNN. I don't know, that's kind of a big deal if you ask me. She came out and waved the white flag and said, look, and I respect her for this statement. She said, I'm not going to spend more time with my family, although I love them and will spend more time with them. I'm stepping down because my rating sucked. And I tried to compete with Keith Olbermann and Bill O'Reilly and Nancy Grace, and I couldn't do it. And I got to step aside so they could try something new at CNN. That is the most refreshing resignation letter I have ever heard. You know, she brags on the show about how she does no spin. Well, you got to give it to her. That was no spin. And so now CNN has to go in a new direction. Quick note on who they might go with. Washington Examiner, I believe, is reporting they might go with Elliot Spitzer. Huh. Boy, that would be interesting. All right, let's see what happens. Young Turks. All right, back on the Young Turks. Scott, we got such fun stories for you guys. We got a great Hooters story, unreal religious discrimination story, but it's, I don't know, I think it's fun. And then Anna was at the Laugh Factory. She's got some great interviews there. But I got to give you two more political stories. I have to, okay? It's a fiduciary responsibility on my part. All right, number one, Tennessee Governor Phil Bredesen, he's a Democrat, and he has voted down a measure, he has vetoed a measure that would have allowed permit holders to carry their firearms in Tennessee into bars, nightclubs, museums, zoos, and other establishments that have liquor licenses. He said, look, it's common sense. I mean, come on, I can't have you bring the guns into the bars. It's not going to work out well. I like that they could bring it into the other places, too. I like bring it into a nightclub. Imagine they allowed that in New Jersey. Oh, there'd be a massacre every weekend. Oh, we got a situation. Lock and load. Okay, I mean, you know how many bars those fights that they get into? Believe me, I grew up in New Jersey. My guess is Tennessee's not that much better, right? He says, look, come on, I can't have you bringing the guns in there. And he earlier had vetoed a bill that allowed people to bring guns into restaurants. So you go to TGIFs. Yeah, you'll thank God it's Friday when I have you meet your maker. I mean, look, why do you need to bring a rifle or a gun or whatever the hell into a Ruby Tuesdays? And how about the museum? Tell me you don't like that Van Gogh one more time. Say one more thing about that Renoir, and you gonna get my 45 up your ass. Zoos, what's that? Orangutans gonna attack you? God, I fear for those animals because you know they're gonna get. Oh, here he comes. No, it's absurd. You know what's more absurd? Even the NRA membership is not in favor of this. The polls show that. The people of Tennessee overall are not in favor of it. But the NRA is so strong, and it's led by the people who make and sell the guns, whose, of course, motivation is to sell more guns, that they're saying to the lawmakers there, hey, you better vote on our side. If you don't, then we're going to say you're against gun rights. You even have a Republican, and they're going to override his veto. All they need is a simple majority. They're going to override it again. Last time they overrode it, the court struck it down as unconstitutional. Okay, but they're going to go for another loop on this. And you have Republican Joe McCord, who's a state legislator, who has an A+ rating from the NRA. And he says, quote, essentially, NRA is saying to us, if you don't support and vote for carrying guns in bars, we will not endorse you. This line of reasoning borders on lunacy. Even the guy with the A+ rating is saying this is absolutely ridiculous to bring guns into everywhere where you might get drunk and get into fights. But nope, the NRA is almighty, and they will have their guns in every nook and cranny. You know what's next after this? The right to have guns inside of baby cribs. I don't know. We ran out of places. So we figured, where else can we put a gun that doesn't make no kind of sense that people hadn't thought of before? Baby cribs. That's coming. Hey, you better vote for it, otherwise you won't have your A+ rating anymore from the NRA. So credit to Bredesen for vetoing it, but it looks like it'll get overridden. And so I love Tennessee. I think it's a great state. Every city I've been in Tennessee I've loved. But now, note of caution, next time you go to Tennessee, be careful which bar you step into. You never know when a gunfight's going to break out. Fuck it. It's totally crazy, man. Real quick, when I was in Scotland, we did this tour of the Highlands, and there was a town called Teeth and a river called Teeth, okay? And that's where the statement armed to the teeth comes from. You know, the Scots, they like to fight, right? So what was happening was everybody would, in Teeth, they'd bring their guns in, and there'd be a gunfight every day. So finally, they said, oh, you know what? Maybe it's not such a great idea to have guns in this town. So you were allowed to be armed to the teeth, but no more after that, because they had to clean up. So we got to relearn that lesson every time. By the way, you know those same Scots, you know where they wound up relocating? To the American South and the Appalachian. I love the Scots, don't get me wrong, but they like to fight, and it's not such a good idea to go in this direction. All right, now one more story for you. This one's sad. We passed a very sad milestone in Afghanistan, 1,000 American deaths. Now, if it was to a good purpose, you could say, hey, listen, you know what, that is an unbelievable toll, but we're doing the right thing. But are we, 9 years later, with no progress in sight? Jonathan Alter, we have him on the show all the time, and he had great access to the president, and he's writing a new book, and there are details out about how Obama laid into the generals. But I got to tell you, it was so not convincing. I'm not saying that I don't believe Alter's account of it. I do. I totally do. And the way he explains it is, on this Afghanistan strategy, remember when Obama was making the decision, he called everybody in, he called the generals in, and he spoke really, really tough to them. And Alter says, oh, the generals have not had a dressing down like that in 50 years. Yeah, Eisenhower didn't know how to talk tough to his generals. How about when Kennedy said, no, you cannot bomb Cuba? No, Obama was tougher, and boy, it really stung. And he'd do things like call, Petraeus, instead of General Petraeus, Dave. His first name is David. Oh, you see, he's telling them who's boss. He's reminding them he's the commander-in-chief. At the end of all that, I say, whoop-de-doo! Totally effing irrelevant. That's, Obama thinks that talking tough matters. No, your action matters. Talking tough is silly. It's semantics. It's like he read it in a book. He read it in a political book. Oh, call them by their first name. Show them who's boss. They come out snickering. And one of the reasons that he was angry was because they leaked like a sieve. The reason for their leak was they wanted to put it in the record that the generals want to stay in Afghanistan longer and they need more troops. And so if Obama comes out against that policy, then he looks like he's going against the advice of his generals, and that's tough for him to do politically. They leaked that. Obama yells at him. So what? They got exactly what they wanted. They got more troops. They got to stay longer. But, ooh, they got scolded. So what happened? We stayed longer. And now there is, we're beginning to see the results. In these last 2 years, 500 people have died. 500 of our troops. That's the equivalent of all the 6-7 years before that. Okay? So now we knew that was going to happen because we're sending in more troops and they're being more proactive and they're looking at for the civilian population more. That's good, okay? Are troops dying? Bad. The question is it working? Then you go to stories like this. New York Times this week. District of Marja. Remember we did that offensive in Marja. We went in and we're like, okay, we're going to straighten out Marja. You're going to see how well we did this thing. And then we can do other battles. Marja is a small town, and it was supposed to be a PR stunt. Now, here's the problem. Even the PR stunt didn't work. Now, families are fleeing Marja because they're getting killed by the Taliban, which did not get defeated. They're getting accidentally killed by us. And 3 months after thousands of troops invaded the Taliban stronghold, the insurgency is still raging. Here is one resident, Abdul Maluk Aka, at 55, saying, every day we're fighting and there's fighting and shelling. We do not feel secure in the village. We decided to leave. He's among the 150 families leaving just this week alone. Security is getting worse by the day, he says. We thought security would be improving, but it didn't. Here's 40-year-old farmer Mir Hamza. He says, I'm sure if I stay in Marja, I will be killed one day, either by the Taliban or the Americans. And by the way, this mission was declared accomplished back in February. They said, oh, we won the battle, now we're moving on. How'd that work out for us? Now, villagers say that, hey, look, the American Marines are actually better than the British that they replaced, and they're, of course, better than the Taliban, and they seem to be trying not to kill civilians and protect civilians. That's good, right? But here are the problems. Many repeat that, I'm quoting the New York Times now, many repeat the Taliban contention that Americans are bent on long-term occupation of Afghanistan and seek to eradicate their religion, Islam, and impose an alien Western-style democracy. Why are they fighting us? Why are the Taliban gaining strength? Because they're telling people, oh, we're there to destroy Islam and occupy Afghanistan forever. So what do? We say, no, we're going to stay in Afghanistan longer with more troops. That doesn't help our cause, it hurts our cause. And then here's more quotes from the New York Times. Villagers complained of indignities imposed by the foreign forces, the arrest and killing of civilians, house searches that violate the ethnic Pashtun sense of honor and the sanctity of home, and checkpoints where they are forced to lift up their shirts, which is deeply shaming for Afghans to show that they are not carrying explosives. We're doing all the wrong things. They're fighting us because we're there. Get out, get out, get out. It's not working. Earlier this week, we had another bombing. Suicide bombing hits a NATO convoy, killing 18. 6 of them troops. 12 of them Afghan civilians. And the only note of possible positive news is Senator Coburn, conservative from Oklahoma, says he will filibuster the bill to put more money into Afghanistan unless it's actually paid for. Finally, a conservative being a conservative and doing the right thing, saying, hey, you know what? I told you should pay for everything. That includes the wars. Thank God. And we'll see if it works or not. By the way, on that note, Obama said, I will not be paying for these wars through emergency appropriations like Bush did to hide their costs. After he yelled at the generals, he agreed to put in $33 billion more in emergency funding for the Afghanistan war, just like the generals asked for. Wow, he was really tough on him. One more. Let's go to Brave New Films. They put together a great video on this. It's a little hard to watch it because every time I see the number clicking, I'm thinking of all the people who died and will not be coming back home. Let's go to clip number 3.
It's been an especially deadly day for U.S. soldiers in Afghanistan. An attack on a remote U.S. base near the Pakistan border has left 9 American soldiers dead.
As we mentioned earlier, former NFL player Pat Tillman is being honored as a hero after he was killed in combat in Afghanistan.
A local family is speaking out tonight about the tragic loss of a loved one in Afghanistan.
A final salute to the 18 American troops killed this week in Afghanistan.
At least 107 U.S. troops have been killed in Afghanistan so far this year, and it's a figure that is set to surpass last year's total. Word this week that 2 more Marines were killed.
Monthly death tolls of U.S. and NATO troops in Afghanistan surpassed U.S. military deaths in Iraq.
I want you to see this picture. That's Private First Class Dennis Pratt on the left and PFC Anthony Lightfoot on the right. Both men would die in combat.
This has been the deadliest month yet for American forces since the war began 8 years ago.
Today, 8 more. These were all U.S. soldiers killed in 2 separate roadside bombs. 2 days, 22 American families suffering incalculable loss.
With casualties mounting in Afghanistan, at least 250 Americans have been killed this year. American support is fading.
51% of Americans don't think the war in Afghanistan is worth it. In fact, it seems the war is making us less safe.
All right, we'll be right back on the Young Turks.